So here we are. Welcome, folks.
Good
Welcome
morning.
to
Or-
one more episode of Quarkus Insights. And this time, we're putting Max on the stage since he hasn't demoed anything in a while. He's been anxious to
Required.
show his J-Bang stuff with Quarkus, so I'm sure everyone will enjoy that. We have
Yeah, I haven't
Emmanuel
been
back,
there.
who's
Yeah, I
been
haven't been there a
absent for a
while.
while. Yeah, you've been
Oh.
absent for a while.
So which number is it?
38, I think.
38.
38. Hey, we're catching up to Google Chrome or something.
I think we made even more than JBoss Asylum now. So, it's...
Yeah. But,
Anyway,
Well, there's so much stuff to show here, so yeah, it just keeps on rolling.
yeah. So it's not so much JBang, it's more about Hibernate and persistence. And it's actually, it came about with a little bit of, well, I'm not saying joke between Jordan and me, but Jordan as a Spring guy kept showing, we always bump into people talking about different ways of Hibernate was too big and slow and you shouldn't use it. And then when you see the examples of how to use, they say to use instead, it's like, well, Hibernate has the exact same feature. We should go and talk about that, at least have it documented. And we've been talking for a long time, and then I said, okay, let's just do an episode on it, and then see if we can make something out of it.
Yeah,
And,
this came up like more than a year ago.
Yeah, and then it comes up like once a month in some form. So yeah.
Yeah, because the Spring folks, they're like, oh yeah, use JDBC template or whatever.
Yeah. So
it's like.
So yeah. So anyway, for anyone who's listening, yeah, I'll be talking. Do you want to turn on the screen sharing? Then they can see my beautiful slides.
So is there any news before that, or was there no news?
Well, the 1.12 release is going out like sometime this week, so probably best to talk about it next week, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than that, I think 1.13 will be pretty big, but we have time to talk about that.
Yeah, we kind of in between. It's a quiet week in sense of news on that one.
Okay, cool.
I think next week will be a much more heavy one. And otherwise, yeah, nothing else.
More newsworthy next week, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's a bunch of bugs we're looking into, but that's I want to get that done. Okay. Well, the news is that you're here, Manuel. That's the big news for today.
Wow, that's slow news, man.
Yeah. So anyway, So I'll talk about this persistence and effective persistence thing. And if you have questions, you just ask on the chat, and we'll try and cover it. And I'm actually gonna be fairly sloppy. Is that the best word I can use? In the code I'll show.
Freeform.
Unpolished.
Oh no! It's not unpolished. It's just that. It'll come. But anyway, so the thing is that I keep seeing that people say that Hibernate is slow, it hides the database, it's complicated, and it doesn't let you write SQL because that's what you used to do. And then people fall back to, hey, I have this other basic SQL. And by basic, I mean it's just using SQL or some lower abstraction, and it gives me what I need, which might be true. And I'm not arguing against that because I actually think the features they have is excellent. I just want to show that they are actually present in Hibernate too. And then there's...
So just to clarify, there are like two camps. The people that, three camps, I guess. The people that use Hibernate and they haven't thought about it or have been told. And then there is a camp that use Hibernate and its abstraction because they just don't want to write those queries over and over again. And then some people really want tight control into what has been written, and I guess their app is simple enough that it's still a manageable cost, and they feel that the ORM is actually abstracting away that, and too much magic is always like
exactly
some of the feedback you hear from any framework that people don't fully have the knowledge of.
Exactly, right. And then in what Hibernate tend to promote, and this is the challenge, is that the default and the real power in Hibernate comes when you do what we call managed entities, where we have a session that has, like we call the first level cache of your entities. You load them up, and we keep track of changes are there, so you don't have to do your persist or update or delete explicitly, versus let's call the manual managed DTO, where everything is in your control. So I just want to highlight these. Just I'm not going to give all the answers. I want to give some examples of stuff that I just.
Oh, by the way, so sure. I'm here, so I'll keep sidetracking you. The one big reason why Hibernate does manage entity, you could say it can be more efficient because we optimize and do just one update instead of many, right? But I think the biggest value is when you start talking about nested relationships, and that's where the whole simple update model gets quite complicated when you have an object that has a collection of other objects, which also have objects associated to them, maybe back to the first one, then again, and it's getting super complicated to know when you want to do an update and which part and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's where the managed entity is actually an interesting model from that point of view.
Yeah. And that's my point here is actually, I'm trying to reach the people that has a fairly simple persistent problem, but just show that Hibernate, especially inside Quarkus, it's there, and it's there if you activate it, and then you have it all set up, and you don't have to go and set something else up to get those behaviors. So it's my point is my claim is that Hibernate is fast. The database, we've never wanted the database to be hidden because the database is a powerful thing. The relational model is great. So we've always made it very, that you can use native SQL for everything. And I was just before we started this part, I just made a joke that I had to go and do this. I had to go back to my blog from 16 years ago, which is just ancient. But I made a blog 16 years ago where we actually implemented this stuff. On how in relation to, and those things hasn't changed. These are good old traditional, so to speak, conservative values in how to access data. So anyway, the point is that Hibernate lets you mix and match your persistence styles, but I will do the big exclamation that be careful. Data is don't try and mix and match these on free, but if you really want to do basic, you can do that with Hibernate, and if you want to do complex, you can do that too.
Yeah. And by the way, it's fast, so that's your claim. It's also, I guess, Sunny's claim, right? So Sunny has been keeping a really close eye on the Hibernate speed, and essentially at this stage, it's quite indistinguishable from plain JDBC usage in the flame graph and whatnot. So we're really good at having essentially or close to an epsilon cost for Hibernate.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that San has been keeping us honest in the entire Quarkus stack for speed and performance.
It's like you're performancing it wrong. It's like
So and by the way, in this conversation, I'm not even talking about Hibernate Reactive, right? Hibernate Reactive is a whole different kind of level of fast and things you can do. Even just basic, let's call it standard Hibernate, has this very low overhead to do this. So anyway, this is the stuff I'm going to cover about how you do the different things. So let me try and jump in. So first of all,
if you have people, if you have questions, please send them to the
chat,
to the chat, and I'll happily interrupt Max.
That's been confirmed multiple times today. That's good.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll just share a little bit of this setup I have, and of course I can't. I've done this with JBang just because that's more fun. So I actually have a little JBang script which doesn't do anything except using test containers to start up a Postgres database. The Postgres database is this Frantisex Postgres Sakila. So I don't know if you know, Sakila is this testing testing. Sorry, Sequila is a testing database that has a lot of like actors and movies and data in it. I wanted to show you the diagram for it, but for some reason that made my stream very slow. But if you've probably seen it somewhere, there's like a ton of them, like Postgres, MySQL, DB2, and others. It's available in many places. So I just have it here's a Postgres database, and so I'm basically using what do you call it? JBang as a little poor man's Docker Compose. So it just every time I start this thing, it will have a clean database to get started with. Right. So that's the one thing. And then I have a little project, and again, it's just a single file, and I have a few pieces of code I'll go through.
Do you want to tell us how old you are, having problem with the whole Lambda stuff and not figuring out debugging?
Sure. Well, I'm not old. That was yeah. It was a very complicated issue, but yeah, I still don't think. Yeah, I'm still not sold on the stream debuggability at least. So
that's because it's worse.
That's true. So
there's nothing to be sold on.
Yeah. Well, just to explain. So I had this. I ended up with a symbolic link on my drive that was broken, and I didn't notice it. And when in JBang, I have a chain of streams that process the source files, and it just blew up with like a null. I was like, what the? And it turned out that there was when you hit a symbolic link, there's no file, and then it becomes a null, and it just took me like 3 hours to figure out. So anyway, that was my stupidity. So anyway, I'll just show you here is a little piece of code. I'm just gonna have an EM here, which is injected in an entity manager. And I'm just gonna get the system factory to get statistics because I want to show you the difference in behavior against the database. And it just prints out. I made my own print feature that just prints out the stats that is bigger than 0. So because how to get like 15 different stats or 20, I just want the ones that actually kicked in. But we'll see them when we run. And it's a very small little thing. And mind you, I'm actually using Panache. I just wrote. There is a table in that test database called actor, and it's called. It's not called ID. Oops, go away. There you go. And I just mapped the first name and last update as fields. And again, this is what I'm saying about sloppy. I'm not adding getter and setters. I'm just showing, what's the simple stuff I can do to access the data. Then if you want to add setters and getters and be shiny, you can do that. But I'll just try and keep it simple. Okay, so update via entity. So I'm going to query all the actors. I'm gonna go through them, and then if it has an uppercase in the first character, I'm gonna lowercase it, and if it's the other way around, I'm gonna uppercase it, just so it always will update no matter how many times I run this. And again, stupid example. I'm just saying, there's no persistent code in this sense. Like, there's no transactions, there's no statements, it's all managed by Hibernate. So if I run this,
transactional on your method above, right?
Yes, but that's just me in this example, just saying, hey, I want to make sure that's the transaction, a new one that runs here, so I see it. But it's not required for this example. Just for my test.
I think it is because you need the transaction boundaries to flush, right?
Yes, but that's what I do for this example. Just make sure I don't have to do.
Oh, okay.
Right. So you'll see here. My screen is slow here, but you will see it's printed out a lot of updates of different lines, and you'll see it said I've updated 200 loaded and updated 200 entities, and there was statements prepared 201. So there's 201 queries executed. So one was the query to list all the stuff, and then 200 updates to iterate those 200 things up here. So this is managed Hibernate. So one of the powers of managed Hibernate is I can go up here in the top. And by the way, those who haven't seen JBang before, I just have a Java file that says the dependencies. And then here I also have Quarkus set up. And you have this normally application properties if you wanted to. So there's, I, for example, have enabled the logging of SQL, formatted so it looks nice. And then there's this JWT statement batch size, which default I think is 0. But I'm just going to add it. I'm just going to put it to, let's say, 50. That's the only thing I'm going to change. And what this tells Hibernate is like, hey, when you do updates and inserts, insert and updates, please batch them in the size of 50, so you don't do unnecessary, if you can, right? And I'll just run the thing.
Hey, Max, interrupt.
Yep.
So Nicholas is asking, how small and fast of a footprint does a native Quarkus service have when Hibernate is included? Since Hibernate will never be atomic, subatomic, supersonic Java.
So that's the thing, is that was actually the it is subatomic Java. Like I don't have it set up here so I can show it, but the demo I normally show is like a to-do item, which is a full stack of Hibernate and Postgres and the whole thing, and you compile that to native, and it starts up in less than like half a second or even less. And
way less. Probably like 20 or 30 milliseconds.
Yeah, right. So that's the amazing thing that like Santa was the one who showed it to me like how many years ago it was, that he made Hibernate supersonic, right? So
what we did, what he mostly, but we collectively did is there's a lot of work that Hibernate is doing to bootstrap, like calculating the list of entities, calculating the queries that have to be executed, and so on. And then we shift that to build time so that all of that preparation is down to pretty much 0, except the final tweaking. So all of that extra overhead is gone. So the bootstrap is really fast from that point of view.
Yeah. And it's not. Nicholas says 20 milliseconds is good, but not about the size. Like the memory, again, the RSS when you start up is like about 5 megs or something. And then of course when you start querying data and do all that stuff, then you're taking up space. But that's any persistent
data
solution will do that. But it's not Hibernate itself that is causing anything in that thing. And again, just since we talk about like I talked about a 16-year-old blog, the most efficient way of lowering memory consumption and startup time of Hibernate, 15 years ago, was that we serialized the configuration. Like that was like a poor man Quarkus we did back then. And it's when you talk about Hibernate being slow with like startup and memory, it is the stuff that Quarkus exactly is cutting out. And then the other part, which is what we're talking about today, is when you start accessing data, then if you are not considering what a database actually can do and not do, when you write your Hibernate code or JPA or any SQL, then you'll get memory usage that's out the window. But that's not the fault of the framework.
Let me add a new inside story on that one. So when we worked on Quarkus, the prototype, right, when we trying to validate that Quarkus could be a thing as far as being supersonic, subatomic, is we took the dependency injection, we took the object relational mapper, and we took a REST endpoint as the 3 use case we wanted to have inside the project, right, to validate that. So, because that's what a lot of applications do. They react to a REST endpoint, they store stuff in a database, read stuff from a database, and put it back, right?
Yep.
And what we wanted to compare against was not so much other Java frameworks, but Go applications, right? So we also wrote an equivalent Go application with the ORM du jour and in their respective area. And funny enough, we were within the ballpark, which was our objective. But the one where we actually beat Go from a speed point of view was actually the database access. And our hypothesis is that Go ORM are not as mature as the Java ORMs, and therefore the statement and how the query is created and prepared and whatnot was not as optimized. So we managed to beat Go from that point of view on startup time.
Yeah. So Nicola asked, like, memory is heap size. How much memory do I have to have for the service in OpenShift, assuming basic CRUD for basic entity? It depends on your data.
And the rate that requests are coming in, right?
Yeah, right. But you can, like, the demo I do, where again I don't have it ready here, but I start up 250 instances of that service running on my Mac, and I hit it with like 100 requests, and the memory is not that big. And this is just a like to-do app, like, but. So
yeah, I think for if you say load up to 20 elements at a time, so let's say like you do paginations, right? So you don't load the whole database to simplify stuff. The rest is pure CRUD. Yeah, if I recall correctly, when you start and you do your initial request, you are about 35 RSS resident set size usage. So it's not the heap size; it's the entire size of the process. 35, and then if you start and exercise those, you probably will move to 45, 50, maybe something around those lines. So just check on your actual usage, and that's with the native image. If you use the JVM, it's a bit more, but it's definitely less than the competition.
Yeah. Let's be clear. I talked about the native ones, but yeah, for basic one is a bit, I don't know, 120 or something would be. Nicola says 30, 50. Yes. For base
50 megs of resident set size.
Yeah.
So that's the entire process usage that Kubernetes uses to know whether you're in boundaries or not of your usage, or OpenShift.
Yeah. So it's definitely doable. Okay. So anyway, I changed that to 50 and I ran it here locally, and you see, there's still these updates, but in total, with just changing the bat size, I now went from was it 201 till 2, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the, well, it's a very simple explanation of why it's nice to have Hibernate, because it means you can do these kind of tweaks by just configuring yourself around it.
I'm actually puzzled. How can it be 2?
Actually, it's less. That's actually less. Why did I? 50 flosses. Maybe.
Is it really this? It's rather the prepare statement, not so much the execution, the actual statement, right?
Yeah, it's that one. That one actually should be 4. What is that? Let me just try one here, because that's.
No, it should be 5.
Yeah, let's do 10.
I think it's just saying how much prepare statement is being created, not necessarily how many queries are being created. Might be using the wrong metrics.
It could be. But anyway, the point is the same. Whether I showed the wrong metric or not, it does execute less statements, and it's just slow to start up here. Yeah. Streaming at the same time is not the rate. Max query time 200. It's 2. Why is it 2?
Yeah, but I think that's what I just said. Anyways, it should be in this case
20.
20 plus 1. Yeah. 20.
Yeah. Right. So anyway, let me just put that back to 0. So that's the basic entity management thing. There we go, managed. And by changing a few things, you can add them in. So again, I'm not gonna. So there's more stuff you can do. Like this is update stuff. There's also when you start doing querying and stuff, you can tweak the things. But I'm not gonna spend time on that here. I want to show the more the non-managed side of things, or more updating of stuff. So let's do the next one. It's still managed entities. Now I'm inserting a lot of rows. So again, stupidly simple example here. I have a language entity that just has like a name in it, and it's going to generate like 100,000, and you will see what happens now when I'm running it. It's just going to print out, and then after a few times, it's going to run out of either. I think now because it's slow, it's going to be time. But when I don't stream at the same time, this will actually run out of memory because I'm only running with 60. I'm running with the default VM settings. I haven't changed anything here. And yeah, this annoyingly slow. Anyway, it'll start printing out. It's doing all these inserts, but then after 60 seconds, it's gonna time out. Where's the line you can see? Okay, this is stressing my machine now. I can't. Hey, this is my machine literally blocks up when I do this because here I'm actually running the 100,000, and literally is processing I don't know a few hundred transactions a second on my machine into this one connection database. But anyway, the point is that here, what you're actually tricking, even without knowing it, like you're saying, oh, I'm just gonna insert. Like if you're on if you don't fully understand what Hibernate does here, you just why is this a problem? I'm just persisting this new entity one at a time. That should be easy. It's just an insert statement, and that's it. The problem is that Hibernate will honor your transaction boundaries, and well, that's not a problem. That's the good thing. But you are basically you're telling Hibernate, hey, once you get to the transaction at the end, please keep an eye on this object until we get to the transaction. So you're basically loading up 100,000 elements into this single first level cache, and you don't need to. You're just inserting these items. It's like a batch bulk processing thing you want to do here. So what's the way of doing that instead? So instead of doing the bulk processing, I'm going to do bulk stateless processing.
So you want to explain like where the name Stateless comes from?
Yeah. So before I'll just say, if you go to the like Hibernate docs, you'll actually see there is a way of doing this stateful too, where you do what's called batch update instead. But I found that I want to spend the time on this stateless one because it's less a known thing. So the default session or entity manager you get in Hibernate or JPA is a stateful session. It keeps the state for you and manages it. Stateless has the similar API and has access to your mappings, or it doesn't have to have any mappings. And it lets you do like insert and delete and update. So it's not persist, but it's insert. So it's I think we call it command modes. It's like you're literally doing more low-level operations on your thing. So I think you can here have a stateless session. You'll see that it looks like a session, like create criteria, create name query, store procedures, all the stuff you used to. But then you'll see inserts, and there's also like delete and others. And these are just extra. Well, sorry, they're commands you execute against the database. And the difference is this station doesn't have any state, so it doesn't keep around the 50,000 or 200,000 entities you have if you no longer have a Java reference to them. Okay. And by the way, just for those to know, that the way you get a stateless session is right now not very pretty, but it's one of the things I do want to add to Quarkus. But you take your entity manager, you do an unwrap, and you get the Hibernate session factory, and then you say open stateless session, right? And that gives you a stateless session. I have a PR that's been stuck for a long time, but I want to get it in. That makes that something you can inject, so you don't have to deal with this kind of thing. But anyway, it doesn't functionally. It's going to be the same thing. So what? I'm on the wrong one. Sorry. There you So again, it's the same code. Go create 10,000 objects, the DB language, create them and print them out, and then insert them. And but one thing that's important to note here: if you did more of the stuff that Emmanuel talked about, of having more like connected objects, like a language has a country and a country has whatever goes further, you will then now have to do all those inserts and updates manually. And if you change a value, you have to call update. That is for some people completely natural, and that's how they like to do it. But I just want to make sure those who actually are used to Hibernate and they see this, they go like, "Oh, this is much simpler." Yeah, but it gets more complicated once you have, a graph. But again, I like both sides of this. So anyway, you do the insert, and then I'm just again mainly just to not overload my my computer. I say every 20 times I'm just gonna manually commit. And I have a transaction, and I say commit, and then begin it again.
Yeah. So that one is to make Nicholas happy and keeping the memory usage at a given time low, so that the memory pressure on the native image or even the JVM remains pretty limited, right?
Yeah. Right. Because I could, if I just did an insert and didn't do this, right, this thing, I wouldn't be using the memory on my Java process, but I'll holding up the transaction to commit all 100,000 at one point, right? So the way I do this is I have a user transaction. So this is a Java X user transaction. Oh, why does that one keep happening coming in? There we go. And that lets me be a little dirty. Why not? In control, depending on your perspective, and I can then completely control the boundaries on transaction. This is not something I recommend you to do everywhere, but for this unique case specific niche case of bulk processing, this becomes handy. So I'm not going to run this because I know it's going to be slow, but on my setup, but it will basically run to completeness, and there'll be 20 rows inserted at a time into it, and there'll be 20 divided by 100,000 transactions if it's there. You could actually
divided by 20.
Yeah, sorry, 100,000. And this trick here, you could do that with managed entities too, but you would still be taking up memory for the per 20 or that kind of thing. So again, the point is to show that you have full control and you don't need to use all the higher level functions of Hibernate. I'm literally just using a command mode approach, and I'm using the same settings and configuration. The Hibernate and SANA already made really fast. So if you want to use like raw SQL, like a raw level thing, you can do that with this stateless session. Okay.
That's
so, just for info.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so, just for info, I just put a comment. It seems that links don't propagate to every messaging system, but in YouTube, I put the link to the guides that is around transactions. So it's quarkus.io/guides/transaction. And it shows the declarative process as well as the explicit process to get a transaction manager or add user. Actually, we don't show add user transaction, but we should. So a small improvement on the doc.
So, well, I actually got this.
We do see the user transaction. Okay, sorry.
that's. I actually thought when I started this on Friday, I thought I had to do this another way, and I'm like, oh, we have that actually documented, so I'll do that.
Yeah.
And I see Amir is saying, any other way with repository we can do bulk processing? Yes, there is, and I realized I should have that example now, but I can't even remember it in my head, but I'll just say that you can do it in two ways. Where did it go? So here, with the repository, you could have this code in a repository, as like just have a method that goes and gets a status session and do it, because these here, the lang name, these are Panache entities, right? But if you want to do batch processing like fully managed, there is in the Hibernate docs, just look for bulk processing. it shows the example of how to use an iterate. Like what you do instead of iterating through all these is you do like you do a persist and flush of managed entities, and therefore you keep the memory down.
You're talking about the Panache documentation or the Hibernate documentation?
The Hibernate documentation has this bulk processing. Like literally, this example is from the Hibernate example. What's there? So to Amar, there is look for bulk processing or bulk or batch processing in the Hibernate docs. They will show you the way of doing this for managed entities. Batch kind of things. Yes, yeah, they are there.
This is the technical term.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me remember where I came from. So do data. So we had the bulk stateless thing. Yeah.
Now you're getting into what I wanted to ask.
Yes, that's the more fun. And there you go. Data queries.
Okay, so I don't trust Hibernate is writing crappy SQL, and maybe we'll change it at one time, and it'll screw me up.
Yes.
I want to be in control.
That's what this is. And I just realized now when I started here, I'm not even showing all the stuff you can overwrite. Here you go. So
it's okay. You're confusing enough people.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of things. So what I'm showing here is the query mechanism that you can do native queries, and this I assume most people know how this works, but I'll just highlight it anyway. So like you have create query that takes SQL query. You can also do SQL one. So this is a very the simplest one. Select star from actor.
By the way, a very good anti-pattern. You shouldn't do select star.
Yes.
For information.
As I said, I was being very sloppy.
That's why you should use an ORM.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, just for those who don't why I know what's in star. You know what's in star today
now
your day, but next say a week or now, for a month, a year from now, someone adds like a big blob or something in there you don't use. You're literally then just carrying that from the database to your service for no good reason. And then your DBA will come and yell at you.
And it's a bit of a security exposure too. So we won't talk about that.
Yeah, but it's my code is bad. I said it's sloppy. Anyway, I say select star from actor. I want it to be an actor, and I say get the stream and find first, and it just prints out that actor. So this is the simplest native query thing I could think of all things.
And this will match the fields, in the database to the fields.
This is using a native query to get managed entities, right?
Okay.
So this is just, hey, I don't trust your HQL or list all stuff. I just want to do whatever.
And so it does what regular Hibernate does, but throws out the SQL generation stuff and uses yours, right?
Yes.
And all the rest is the same?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. There's no difference technically behind the scenes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And man, JBang makes sloppy. Yes, JBang is all about being able to do stuff in a sloppy way. So it's fun.
It's like when you write batch.
Yes.
Scripts. It's the same.
So anyway, I just want to show that you can go just drop all the managed stuff too. And I'm just going to use the stateless set in this case. And there's a thing on a session called do work, which also exists for a normal session. So I could also just use that if I wanted to. And I just say this connection, and here's a query. I forgot what it's doing. Yeah, it's just gonna get first name, last name, and the count from the actor and get it over. And it's just I'm just showing random SQL that gives me, I think it's the highest number of films by one actor or something. I think that's the thing. I'm just going to skip over this, and then I do session, create the SQL query, and I go and I
you
add
map your results, right?
Yeah, map your result. Like add scalar on these different things. But the thing is, I actually don't need to have them. But
scalar means not an entity, right? So not a managed object.
So this first name is a string. This is a string, and this is long type. I don't actually have to have them here, but I'm just going to print out.
This is the thing that I wanted to see for a year. This is the type of thing I've been wanting to see, because I'd never seen this.
Okay, you'll see it in I'm gonna be a bit more advanced in the next one, but let me just show you. Man, this is slow. That's horrible. Why the
man? If it's a trick to make your manager buy a bigger machine, it's not working.
No, it's not working.
We've all tried.
So anyway, yeah, this normally takes like under half a second. So that's the. Yeah, you see here, Gina Dinera is 42, and just to get my point home, I should not actually. This is actually just me being polite. I just remove these, right? So I'll be even more sloppy. There we go. And now, you notice it prints out this like array, because what it's actually returning is an array of the different values. Not nothing mapped, just raw, as raw as it can be. And again, my point here is that you the only thing you set up to do this in Quarkus is you add Hibernate dependency, you set the data source, and you have access to this. And that's it. Well, then there's the one thing I want to change is that right now, because of performance, Hibernate is not going to be active unless you have one. You have to have one add entity. But that's the only thing. So right now in Quarkus, you go and add a fake entity called Georges doesn't like to do stuff or something, and that's then it'll be fine. But that's one of the things I want to fix in the future. So you see here, it prints out the data. Gina Daenerys 42, and like there's no, I haven't defined anything. So I now have access.
So let me rephrase. So here, what you're saying is that you haven't even defined an entity that is mapping to this actor, first name, last name, and so on. It's just plain SQL without entity mapping.
Yeah.
And you just need one because there is an optimization in Quarkus that says if there is no entity, we don't need Hibernate, so we eliminate entirely the code base.
Yes.
But we'll find a workaround at some point.
Yeah. So we will see, but the other thing I can do is, just as an example, I can combine another framework that people are using to build SQL called JOQ. Juke. Somewhat like, I don't know how to pronounce correctly, but Juke. I'm not sure why it's getting. I've removed all the imports. Anyway, let me just comment that out. I don't want to figure. And here I'm using Duke to create SQL. So Duke has its own persistent stuff, but another thing it has a strongly typed SQL builder pattern. So here I'm using Duke to just create the SQL. And if you squeeze your eyes, you can see it's the same. Like select first name, last name, films, actor ID, join group by SQL. It's the exact same thing, just expressed in type safe in quotes Java. My point was just to show that it is, you can combine it with any other tool that can generate SQL, feed it into Hibernate, and get what you need, what you're after. Okay. Yes, the single result is an array. Yes.
So yeah, now you know what my next question is going to be, right?
Yes.
You don't want an array, do you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to type.
But this now we're back to my 15-year-old blog, because that's what that one did. So
excellent.
Right. So and before don't log as suppressed warnings. I'll get back to that in 2 seconds. So here.
Plus transformers are cool, right?
Yes.
Autobot.
So again, I have an SQL. statement. I think this is gonna get like the yield, like payment per year per month for the 2 employees that are in the database. Again, I'm getting a session to get these loaded. I take this SQL, and then instead of just running the SQL directly, I do this set result transformer. And in this case, I'm actually using an entity. So just to be clear, so where is the thing? Sorry, I'm not using entity. No, I'm not. I'm using a map. Sorry. It's the name here that confused me. So alias to entity map. So what it does is instead of creating an array, it creates a map. And you'll see it prints out item, the get first name.
JavaScript style, no types needed, just use a map for everything.
Yes, basically, right? And I'll just let me just run this so you can see the actual output that comes out. So basically, I'm running native SQL. Instead of getting an array of whatever, I'm gonna get a map that has all the items in here. And mind you, I can at this point I can use all the Hibernate type system. Like Hibernate has a notion of supporting like 2 or 3 columns get to be like if you have like value and currency, it's an amount. You can map that, so you can do basic mapping here too, without having to specify like do JPA mapping, that kind of thing. And
sorry, you lost me. What do you mean?
So here I could go and do add scalar. Where is it?
Okay, so what we saw earlier, like add scalar first name and then a type or something. Okay.
Yes, and there you can add. You can have multiple types on that one. Right? You can have the what's it? Oh, actually, I haven't tested that. I have to actually check that again. There was a time, at least, you could add mapping of specific columns. So, because you have some Hibernate types that has multiple columns, so you can do that. But point is, there's
let's say a date could be mapped, or maybe date is the wrong one.
Yeah, but you can have like you can also have like a string that has encodes something.
From an SQL column, we infer default type, but you can override it with this add scalar.
Yes, correct. Okay, so anyway, first one, you get a map, and you have to use strings to go get it out. Again, some people like that, some people don't, but you can. Then explicit types. So now, again, this is formatting here. I actually go and make it. Oh, that's my example.
That's the one example. Yeah.
That's the one example of setting the different types on it. So you'll actually see. Where is it? I should. Can't. Oh, there we go. You'll see here the first run says 2007.0-3.0. That's the default mapping because that the value. Sorry, not the value. The type of the sum is what's that? A big decimal, big int or something, which can't be in a Java int. So you have, if you want it to be a long or a more specific one, you add them in. Like so, Scala become like the Y is year, M is month. The sum here I leave because it's a big decimal. So you can do all kind of different mappings here. So Hibernate has a default mechanism that lets you get the data, and then you can tweak it as you would do if you use any other low-level framework for it. Okay, so next one. I've been I mapped entities, I mapped to maps, I mapped to arrays, I control the types, and now DTO. So I want a class, but it's not a
not managed,
yeah, right. Well, not managed, but it's not mapped, right? So I have a sale DTO that just says, again, sloppy, public long, month, year, first name, last name, sum. And I set the transformer up. And now the trick is I say transformers, alias to bean, sale DTO. And
10 minutes max.
Yeah, and that in the end will just do what you think it will do. It will, instead of creating a map, it's going to take all that the column names and map into that bean that you said you want to put here. Right? And this is again, has been in there for a very long time in Hibernate, and you can combine it in all. Like you can have 99% of your stuff in managed, but then you want to tweak something, you can do so, or you can just go ignore all the managed part and just do this completely raw if you want to. So the one thing I do want to highlight, and this is something I talk with San about because I don't like what there is. If I remove this now in Hibernate 5, these methods are marked as deprecated. But do not believe that. The deprecation just indicates that it is going to change in Hibernate 6, but the same functionality is going to be available. It's just that set result transformer is, as I said, 16 years old. It's tested, it works, it's all good. But in Hibernate 6, they want to change it to be a more functional interface, so the API becomes a bit leaner and meaner. So in Hibernate 5, it's marked as deprecated because it's going to change, not because you shouldn't use it in 5.
Yeah, the concept remains. It will evolve from an API point of view.
Yes, right. So that's why in this specific method, I added the deprecation. The deprecation just to not have that unchecked is because I'm doing unchecked stuff in here, right? Literally, I'm doing maps and other stuff, and Java tells me I'm being bad. So I got tired of hearing that. So that's why. Yeah. Well, that's kind of, I think that covered actually the ones I prepared at least. So you happy now, Georgios?
Absolutely.
So I got a question. So like for other frameworks, like the one you mentioned, do they implicitly create the insert and update statements somehow, or do you also have to manually write it down?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the typical one like Spring DWC is more like stateless session, but more raw. So they it's like explicitly insert, update, deletes.
Yeah,
but it's based on the mapped object then.
I think they have support for the API annotations just to understand it, but otherwise you literally go more like what you see on the screen here. Like you say I have a type, and just take the column, guess the type from it, and map it over. But you'll see a mix of it. It depends on your use case out there.
By the way, we can in Hibernate override the insert and update statements for information, even for managed entity.
Yeah, that was the one I completely forgot until now. But yeah, we made that like years ago too. So if you can add I forgot what it's called, annotation, but you can any insert, update, delete operation you can tweak to your heart's content. But then
basically, Hibernate can do anything, right? It's just a matter of knowing which point in Hibernate to tweak to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
So you can go from fully managed to fully unmanaged.
Yeah. Right. And I just want to say like this I'm not even, these are not like special or hackish way of doing it. Like this is how like this API is public and it's intended for this specific use case of, hey, we do know there are teams and people who already have existing SQL or just don't want to deal with it for that specific query. So we have it and we know it's relevant. But yeah, you can dial up down from fully managed to very raw. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually the 80-20% case, or it's more like a 95% where, okay, for those 5% queries, we wanted the DBA came up and said, look, I want that specific query because it's using that index and that one. And I'll tell you when I change the index because it's going to change the whole execution plan, right? So that's where you would use such a thing. Yeah. And in the old Hibernate time, you could actually even externalize this file so that it could be an XML file edited by your DBA separately. I think in Quarkus that features is kind of semi-dropped, but we could resuscitate it if people really have a.
Well, I saw someone came up with a use case where persistent. Yeah, so what we're missing is the persistent XML support, which is not there at the moment. But one use case that came up, which Sanne did recognize, and I can see it too, is that if you have an application written like 99% to go on MySQL, but you also want to be supporting Oracle SQL, for example, then having a way to externalize and override the thing, which is persistent XML can do. So I think it will come at some point, but right now it's not. In there.
So Amar has a question, by the way. If we need to protect this data through REST endpoints on UI, how to deal with this?
Well, for this specific, there's no specific thing. You use what's it called? The Quarkus has a well. I think it's just
there's multiple ways to deal with it, right? Yeah, with Panache REST, you could hide fields. Well, Panache REST is like the you write the smallest amount of code as possible. You just write like an entity, and you automatically get this CRUD stuff, and you can hide fields or whatever. But that probably won't get you really far in a lot of cases. So you'd have to go and write your own JAX-RS and do your own security, do your own validation.
Yeah. But you could still like have these behind a REST endpoint, and those REST endpoint has like normal like Quarkus security and authentication stuff on them.
Yeah, so the code here would be within the REST endpoint.
Yes,
right. Is what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, right.
In the controller or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So if Amar is talking about like Panache REST, where you're literally saying, "Hey, Hibernate, I trust you to do everything, and you're perfect," and we are serving out the raw REST endpoints for this, then you wouldn't see this kind of thing. But yeah, I hope that answers the question for you, Amar. On that one.
Cool. Any wrap up? Like, are you gonna do a blog or a long guide or something?
I do wanna write it up as a blog. My main case is just, if you read about Hibernate, you will see you talk most of madness entities, because it's gonna handle the more complex scenarios. I just want to, like, Hibernate has, you can literally go and get the connection and do it raw, or you can use some of the APIs we have, which is just as fine as a lot of those other SQL-like frameworks out there.
I call them object mapper. No, object.
Yeah.
It's just you have to manually create the query. I know it's a wrong terminology, but
yeah. So yeah.
By the way, I think it's good content. The ordering might be done a bit better, because I think you lose the big interesting value of the message at the beginning by talking about the existing way we do things and whatnot. So maybe we should start with the end and then gradually
I'll probably split it up.
We can experiment a bit.
So
yeah, we definitely need to get this documented for posterity, because it's going to get lost. It's hard for people like go through the video and find code, and they can't copy paste or anything. So
I'll make a Quarkus blog says, go read this 16-year-old blog. That's fine. It's good. Same thing.
We should ask people as well ask, and they should reply on Twitter. Give us an idea of which of these things they're really interested in seeing more of.
Yeah. I just touched the surface on what this does.
Yeah.
So yeah. Cool.
1 minute.
That's good.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Really good.
So,
hey, we finished on time.
Question?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, considering there is almost a 1 minute delay, the answer is no. All right. Thanks, everyone. Like Steve said, give us feedback on Twitter or wherever you find us. And we'll adapt this content over time.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye then.